Has your doctor told you that you have high blood pressure or hypertension? Are you at risk for heart disease or stroke? You're not alone. In fact, 67 million Americans suffer from high blood pressure. Heart disease and stroke are the first and third leading causes of death in the United States. If you suffer from high blood pressure and are at risk for heart disease or stroke, there is something simple you can do in your daily life to improve your health. Reduce sodium in your diet. What is sodium? Sodium comes from the salt that you eat in your diet. Eating too much salt raises blood pressure, which increases the risk for heart disease, hypertension, and stroke. 9 out of 10 Americans, 2 years and older, eat too much sodium in their diet. 800,000 people die every year from heart disease, vascular disease, and stroke, diseases that can be caused by eating too much sodium. Overconsumption of sodium leads to $273 billion in healthcare costs every year. To easily improve your health, you can reduce the amount of salt you eat every day. Within weeks of reducing your sodium intake, blood pressure starts to decrease. Lowering sodium intake has been linked to other health benefits, including reducing the risk of gastroesophageal cancer, reduced left ventricular mass, and improving bone density. Nearly all Americans could benefit from reducing salt intake in their diet. However, certain people are at higher risk from negative health effects of salt overconsumption and should reduce their sodium intake even further. High-risk populations include people 51 years and older, African Americans, people with high blood pressure, people with diabetes, and people with chronic kidney disease. So how much salt should you actually have every day? The average American is recommended to have no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, which is about 1 teaspoon of salt. However, the average American actually has closer to 3,200 milligrams per day. For high-risk populations, sodium should be reduced to 1,500 milligrams per day. How much is 1,500 milligrams? Less than 3/4 of 1 teaspoon. If you are at risk for heart disease and want to reduce your sodium intake, make a change as a family. Children are also at risk for salt overconsumption. In fact, 79% of children aged 1 to 3 and 87% of children aged 4 to 5 eat too much salt. Children can have high blood pressure too, and eating too much salt puts their health at risk. Reduce salt as a family to improve your children's health. So where is all this salt coming from? Salt isn't everything, it seems. While reducing the salt you add to your food helps reduce your blood pressure, much of the excess sodium in our diet comes from processed foods and foods from restaurants. 44% of salt consumed in the US comes from 10 categories, including pizza, poultry, soups, sandwiches, cheese, pasta dishes, meat dishes, and snacks. 65% of sodium in the US diet comes from food purchased at the grocery store and convenience stores, and 25% comes from food eaten at restaurants. Overall, 75% of the sodium we consume comes from processed foods and foods purchased at restaurants. To give you an idea of how much sodium you consume when you eat out at restaurants, we're going to show you how much salt some typical restaurant meals contain. This first picture shows the daily recommended amounts for salt. The left pile is about how much salt most people should consume in one day. It's about 1 teaspoon of salt. The middle pile is how much salt high-risk groups should consume in one day. It's about 3/4 of 1 teaspoon of salt. The right pile, on the other hand, is about how much the average American eats every day. Sure, some restaurants can have a lot of salt in their meals, but that's just fast food and chicken nuggets, right? Well, you might be surprised to hear that most restaurant meals are high in sodium, even some that claim to be healthy. For instance, this herb-crusted fillet of salmon from the Cheesecake Factory has 1,240 milligrams of sodium, over half of what you should eat in an entire day. That's represented by the pile of salt on the right. The left pile is the amount of salt that you should consume in an entire day. This Waldorf salad from California Pizza Kitchen has 2,000 milligrams of sodium, almost the full amount you should eat in one day. A large vegetarian sub on wheat from Quiznos has 2,300 milligrams of sodium. That's the most you should be eating in an entire day. And you probably don't order off the health menu each time you eat out either. This pork fried noodles dish from P.F. Chang's has 7,900 milligrams of sodium in it. Again, the pile of salt on the left is the most you should eat in one day. The pile of salt on the right, on the other hand, represents how much salt is in this one dish. That's about half as much salt as you should eat in an entire week. You can reduce the sodium in your diet to improve your health. Remember, within just a few weeks of making a change, your blood pressure will begin to decrease. So what can you do? Begin by making healthy food choices. Cook fresh foods at home instead of eating packaged and processed foods from the grocery store, and limit fast food and food from restaurants. Follow the DASH diet by choosing foods that are high in potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Instead of adding salt to the food you cook, substitute in spices and herbs to improve flavor. If you are at risk for heart disease, limit your sodium intake to less than 1,500 milligrams per day. Remember that it's less than 3/4 of 1 teaspoon. Remember to read nutrition labels and choose low sodium options. Eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, which are naturally rich in calcium, magnesium, and potassium. Limit processed and fast foods. If you are going to eat out, ask for reduced salt options. And finally, cook more at home from fresh ingredients. Make changes in your community to reduce everyone's sodium intake. Encourage your local grocers to offer reduced sodium options and more fresh fruits and vegetables, and support initiatives for decreasing sodium in cafeterias and vending machines at your workplace and at local schools. Remember, you aren't alone. Talk to your doctor about reducing your sodium intake. Eat fewer processed foods and eat out less. Engage your family by cooking together at home more often.